What's up, guys? Welcome to another MarbleCast. Today on the show, we have a USAPL Senior International Coach, Matt Gary. Matt has worked with some of the top-level male and female athletes in international competition and is the current Director of Education for USAPL. We hope you enjoy this episode. Let's check it out. All right, Matt Gary's in the house, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. How the hell you been?
Thanks for having me, Joe. Outstanding. Life is good. I'm a glass half full kind of guy.
Awesome, man. And you're in Montana now. What brought you out there?
Yeah, we just my wife and I just transitioned to Bozeman, Montana. We've been here for about 6 weeks. So right around the 1st of April is when we came out, and so yeah, I just wanted to be around fewer people. I think. More of the right kind of people, a slower pace of life, beautiful landscapes, and a whole lot less politics.
Oh, dude, the politics is it's such a weird thing going on right now. I'm sick of it. As well.
Yeah, we're just living in a crazy time. So, but yeah, so we're just ecstatic to be out here and kind of really looking forward to this next chapter.
Are you rebuilding the gym out there?
Yeah. So what happened was just a little bit of history. We opened SSPT, Supreme Sports Performance and Training, in Rockville, Maryland in 2009. And so we were in business actually for 12 years. And all along our ambition and plan was to transition out west. That was always our goal and our end point, if there is such a thing as an end point. And so, and our timeline actually kind of, believe it or not, kind of fell in line with this whole, COVID thing and kind of the world unraveling, so to speak. Our lease ended in April of 2020. And so, all the COVID hysteria kind of hit around end of February, early March. So we were supposed to be coming back from an international competition, the SBD Sheffield powerlifting competition, but that never happened. So what we wound up doing was we extended our lease one more month, and once we received the mandate from the governor, the gyms were going to close down and we weren't allowed to reopen. We closed our facility and began selling the equipment. So COVID for us, in terms of getting rid of the equipment, was actually a blessing because so many people were scrambling, looking for a place to train, going underground into their garages, their home gyms, and they needed equipment. So we, and if I back up just a second, in 2016, when my wife and I came out to Montana for the second or third time, we purchased some land, and we also purchased a 5,000 square foot warehouse. And so
nice.
our original plan pre-COVID was to open a bigger, better version of SSPT. But once COVID hit and some of the trends and shifts we've seen in the fitness industry, and the fact that we didn't necessarily want to be tethered to a facility any longer for 10 to 12 hours a day, we've reached a point in our life where that's not exactly how we wanted to roll. So we decided to keep our warehouse in Montana as an investment property. And so this is coming back to your original question. We are building on our lot a detached garage that's going to be about 900 square feet, which we're going to trick out with a really bunch of awesome equipment and make that essentially our gym and our private training studio. So because we didn't want to haul all of our equipment from Rockville, Maryland out to Montana, we began selling it all. So I know that's kind of a whirlwind and maybe things are kind of out of order, but hopefully that kind of explains our transition from Rockville, Maryland. So SSPT, as we know it, will continue. We just won't be a public facility in Montana. We'll be a private facility where we'll do, some group coaching, but primarily some one-on-one type stuff, and try to just be a hub for powerlifters in southern Montana.
Yeah, so you are able to get rid of all that equipment. Now you got to re-outfit your gym out there, but you're going to do it with like better equipment, more maybe Alico stuff or whatever. So that's awesome, man. That's congrats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you so much, man. We're just over the moon to be out here and to again kind of start fresh. We didn't want to try to fit that life into this new one. So the only thing we kept was a bar about 500 kilos and one like combo rack, an ER rack.
Yeah.
And so now we're just going to expand our facility from there and get some other key pieces.
Yeah, so you deal with a lot of senior international lifters, and now this will be like a hub for them to come and just train with you one-on-one. That's awesome, man. That's great.
Yeah, we've already, we've got some contacts in the powerlifting community out here in Bozeman. The state chairman for USA Powerlifting for Montana lives here in Bozeman, and we've known him for quite a few number of years. So we've immediately kind of thrown our hands into the pile, so to speak, and that's what we want to do. So like, for instance, there's a meet coming up here in a month, and I'm already going to be coaching a couple of lifters at the meet. My wife is going to go ahead and referee. And so we just want to kind of immerse ourselves in the community and just lend a hand any way we can. But since there isn't necessarily a powerlifting-centric facility in Montana, we want to be that place where people can come and receive some expert coaching and, perhaps even start some type of club or something like that.
Yeah. And then do you want this to be a private facility? So not necessarily like you're marketing towards any powerlifter should come here if they just want to powerlift. You want this to be exclusive for high-level athletes and a training facility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, you nailed it.
That's awesome.
That's right.
So you deal with a lot of big names out there. Ray Williams comes to mind. And how did you get involved with him? I think I saw some YouTube videos with Brian Alsrud, too, that you were coaching him.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with Brian. So Brian Alsrud is, for those of you who don't know, is a strongman competitor and a strongman coach, and he's based out of Westminster, Maryland. So when we were back in Maryland, Brian lived probably about an hour from me, 45 minutes to an hour, and he actually reached out to me just kind of knowing that I was involved in powerlifting, and he came to me to our facility in Rockville for some private coaching, just one-on-one, to help him with the power lifts, because he was just using the squat, bench, and deadlift as part of his, training to help him get stronger for strongman. I think he also competed in a few powerlifting competitions, but primarily he was using the lifts to get stronger for strongman. So he came down to me, we did a few sessions, and he and I are just really two birds of a feather, if you will, kind of cut from the same cloth, really hit it off, developed a friendship, and so he had come to me for some coaching. I had referred many people to his facility called Never Sate, which is primarily a strongman facility, again in Westminster, Maryland. So we became referrals for one another, and just developed a really good friendship. And in terms of Ray Williams, Ray and I actually began working with one another in 2014 in South Africa at the World Championships. And so I was an assistant coach on that staff, and Ray was our super heavyweight, or one of our super heavyweights there. And so I wound up being his hands-on game day coach in 2014, and he and I just hit it off, man, and really the rest, as they say, is history. But Ray is just very dear to me, man. He's family. He's part of my chosen family. I love that guy like a brother. And so, but that was the genesis of our relationship. And so I've been now his private and personal coach since 2014 in South Africa.
What is it like meeting an athlete of that caliber on day one, and you have to coach him at an international meet? Like, how do you get a feel for one another?
Well, I tell you what, and I tell this to everybody, Ray is probably the most coachable lifter that I work with, and that's because Ray's a coach. Ray's a football coach, a defensive line coach at Itawamba Community College in Mississippi, and so he knows what it's like to sit on both sides of that table, so to speak, and so he's so coachable. And I'm not saying this to sound self-righteous or anything, but I've never been the type of person who's really starstruck. I just like to treat everybody the same, man. Just show respect and give respect and treat everybody the same way and fairly. And so I just approached him like a man to man on that day. And I just told him, I said, look, man, I said, I'm here to help you and help facilitate your best performance. And I know that this is your first World Championships. And I'm just speaking from experience. I've been to quite a few of these. And I said, I'd like for today to you just kind of be willing to hand over the keys to the car, so to speak, and just let me drive. And I just need you to execute. And I said, if you do that, I know how strong you are and I know how capable you are. I said, I guarantee you a couple of things. I guarantee you're going to break some world records. And most importantly, I guarantee you're going to walk out of here with a gold medal around your neck. And he smiled and he nodded and he said, yep. He said, let's do it. And he pretty much allowed me to kind of drive that day. And he had a phenomenal day. I believe, if I remember correctly, he only missed one lift, maybe two, but broke some records, became a world champion. And I remember going down to doping control. They were going to drug test him. And we were walking down the stairs to the doping control room. And he looked up at me and he said, you know something? He said, those were the easiest 9 lifts I think I've ever taken. And I had to chuckle. And I said, yeah. I said, I had a feeling you would say something like that. And so those were the easiest 9 lifts that he'd ever taken, yet he lifted more. And I told him, I said, Ray, that's largely a function of the fact that you've been competing without any game day coaching help and expertise, and you've been starting out too heavy and jumping too small. In other words, a man of your strength level, can take larger jumps. And I said, really, it just becomes kind of a math equation at that point. For a guy like you who's squatting, then he wasn't squatting as much as he is now, but still, for a man of your size and strength, you can take a 20 kilo jump or a 25 kilo jump, and that's the same as a smaller, lighter lifter taking, a 7.5 kilo jump or a 10 kilo jump. I said, so you were effectively just starting out too heavy and then not giving yourself the space to increase enough. So he was just starting at too high of a percentage of his max. And of course he was having success because, he was stronger than other people, but he was grinding his gears a little bit and not making as many attempts. And the lifts were harder. And so he'd leave the competitions walking away kind of exhausted. And I just told him, I said, man, there's a better way. And so anyway, our relationship has been nothing but congruent and harmonious. And there's very little bumping of heads. He's so coachable. And I just love the guy. I cannot speak highly enough about Ray Williams.
Yeah, he squats 1,000 pounds like all the time. I see his YouTube videos or his Instagram handle, and he's just like got 900 on the bar almost every day, and he's a big boy, man.
He's a big guy. He really is, and he's incredibly strong. And I tell you, for all that he is as a powerlifter, it pales in comparison to the man he is, the husband, the father, and the human being that guy is, which just speaks volumes about his character and just who he is. And just like I said, I just love him. So.
That's awesome. You get to work with some really awesome people, and that's including your wife too. She's incredible as well. She's not even half the size of Ray, maybe a quarter of the size of Ray.
Yeah. So my wife is 52 kilos. She competes at 114. Ray is now tipping the scales at about 190 kilos, so 418 for those of you that use pounds. So you get 114 and about 4. So Ray is about almost 4 times as big as my wife in terms of body weight. And it's funny because there was a time, just using that analogy about strength and how you can take jumps in powerlifting, there was a time when both my wife and Ray held the open world record, that's regardless of age, in the squat and their weight classes. And of course, Ray still does. My wife is now 52, and her open world record has been overtaken by a much younger competitor out of the Netherlands. But anyway, point being that the two of them both held the world record in the squat, and at one point in time, Ray could literally squat exactly 3 times what my wife did. So it was really a good example of saying, look, Ray can take a 25 kilo jump between his first and second attempt, where Suzie, my wife, is taking a 7.5 kilo jump. It's the same thing. It's identical. Those percentage-wise, those are the same jumps. And so when you can apply some of that math, to attempt selection, it makes things easier rather than, some people when they handle a bigger, stronger lifter, they get a little scared, by some of the numbers. And when you just realize, look, this person is just, we're just looking at it as a math equation, you can, it takes some of that anxiety off, I think.
When you're dealing with an athlete that's at their peak or seemingly at their peak, where their lifts are already world record caliber. What kind of approach do you have to get them past that, to break those barriers even further?
So, yeah, that's an excellent question. One of the things that I always start by saying is, and look, I didn't make Ray Williams who Ray Williams is. I didn't make my wife who she is, and
right.
You know, they don't squat as much as they do because of Matt and Gary. I mean, that would be ridiculous to say. They've been given the God-given talents, you know, the genetics, the leverages, and then furthermore, just the work ethic and the mindset. I've never worked. I mean, the two of them are so mentally tough and confident, not cocky, but just confident in their abilities. So when you have somebody who's already at that level, and then, you know, trying to ascend to the next level, I think in large part, you know, I tell lifters, and this would be good for anybody to hear, that your single greatest ability is availability. And what I mean by that is your health. And when you are healthy and you are available to train. Your second greatest ability as an athlete is durability, which is remaining available, remaining healthy. And then after that, we've got a laundry list of all of these things. But if you're unavailable, then you can't train. And so it's keeping those elite level lifters healthy and available so that they can continue to make progress. And I don't think, you know, with them, you need to reinvent the wheel. It's not like you're necessarily need to, you know, you're throwing the fanciest training at them. I mean, yeah, sometimes you have to get pretty specific, and maybe you're working with bar speed velocities and you need to shake things up a little bit. But it's just about, you know, we use this brick by brick analogy of day by day and one foot in front of the other, and it's boring, but it's really effective, you know, and progress, no matter how small, is still progress. And so, you know, taking those athletes to the next level, I really think it's about keeping them healthy and available, and then just, you know, that incremental progress. And look, progress is not always linear, right? And so, you know, that's why Ray and my wife as well, you know, and other lifters that I've been blessed enough to work with have some ups and downs, you know, and life throws a lot at you, you know, not just injuries, but, you know, life happens. None of us is making a living, I should say, off of lifting weights. And so, you know, in large part, this is a hobby for most people. And so, you know, they have other pursuits. They've got their, you know, their work, the stuff that pays the bills. They've got their family and so forth. But yeah, I mean, I know that wasn't necessarily a sexy answer, but it's my answer.
No, but I get it, because you know, people want to see these sexy things that they're trying to do, and I'm even stupid, and I max out all the time, because I max out to a daily max of my own efforts every day in some capacity. So it's not like I will try not to break myself, but every once in a while, you know, it happens. And I don't do all the accessory work, which I then have these aches and pains from time to time. But I think that's life. And like you said, nothing is linear. You're just trying to make that progress and keep jumping forward. And as we get older, it gets a little bit harder. So that also comes into play.
For sure. Definitely. Father time is undefeated.
Yeah. What do you think brought you to powerlifting instead of like weightlifting or bodybuilding? Like, what got you really interested in powerlifting over everything else?
Well, I've been an athlete all my life, and so growing up, my sport was primarily football. And so, but back when I was playing football, both at the youth level and then high school, you know, weight training and strength training really wasn't as prevalent as, of course, it is now. And so we didn't know as much back then about athletic training and strength and conditioning and so forth. But when I graduated high school, you know, I was a pretty good football player, but I walked on the football team and then earned a partial scholarship at Baylor University. And it was my strength coach at Baylor that really kind of turned me on to strength and conditioning. And so it turned out that I wasn't too fond of Waco, Texas. And so I kind of, and Baylor didn't have a kinesiology or an exercise physiology program. So I killed two birds with one stone and transferred to the University of Maryland. So at the time, came back home. And they had a very good health and human performance department. And so I was able to actually declare a major, exercise science and kinesiology, and finish my degree at Maryland. So it was my strength and conditioning coach at Baylor that kind of turned me on to strength and athletic training and that sort of thing. But in terms of my attraction to powerlifting, I've always been kind of an analytical, numbers-oriented kind of guy, and always been fascinated by strength. And largely, I appreciate how simple powerlifting is, and how it determines a clear winner based on objective measures, not subjective ones. And so that's why I definitely have an affinity for powerlifting versus some of these other pursuits like bodybuilding or things of that nature, because there's objective criteria that need to be met, and you weigh in at the beginning of the day, and the person with the highest total wins, and it's pretty cut and dry. And so you at the end, not necessarily who's the strongest. I always tell people, powerlifting doesn't necessarily measure who's the strongest. It determines who's the best powerlifter, because once you ascend to that high of a level, where so many of the lifters are so close, and world championships, national championships are often determined by a few kilos or body weight, it then becomes a game. And so, you're trying to maximize your total, and so really you're trying to determine who's the best powerlifter at that point. But I really just appreciate powerlifting's simplicity and how objective it is. That's what attracts me to it.
Yeah, the simplicity, like squat, bench, deadlift. If you squat, bench, deadlift, your squat, bench, and deadlift will go up. See, with weightlifting, as a weightlifter and CrossFit athlete, it's really hard to increase my snatch and clean and jerk without also increasing my squat and deadlift, squat, press, and deadlift. So in order to get better at weightlifting, I gotta get better at all that other stuff, and then I gotta get better at weightlifting. It's very complicated. My total doesn't go up all that often. But when I do every once in a while I'll throw a 12-week powerlifting cycle where I'll low bar and I'll bench, and those numbers go up way easier. And it's just it's very unfair for my weightlifting career.
Yeah, I mean, I have such a tremendous amount of respect for weightlifters. I mean, what weightlifters do, the skill required, for the snatch and clean and jerk are far above and beyond what is required to, sit into a deep squat, bench press, and deadlift. And so it just takes years and years to truly master the timing of those lifts, and speed is such a crucial component with weightlifting, and that's why you don't see a lot of elite weightlifters after the age of 30. They're just too slow. But I have nothing but exactly, right. True.
Talking about that natural stuff, with the IPF coming out with the idea that every country has their own set of rules about anti-doping, and you being a international coach for USA, where we have some of the strictest anti-doping policies, how is it like? What's it like going up against those other countries when you know that they're not testing their athletes the same way?
Well, frankly, it's all I've ever known. I started my powerlifting journey back in 1995, so I've been involved in the sport for that's 26 years.
What was it called before USAPL?
So it was called ADFPA,
right,
which stands for American Drug-Free Powerlifting Association. However, at the time, when I started in 1995, the ADFPA was not the affiliate or the gateway into the IPF. The USPF was at the time, which is the United States Powerlifting Federation. So when I started competing, which was in 1995, I competed with the then IPF affiliate, USPF. They didn't do any out-of-meet drug testing with the USPF. They only did in-meet drug testing. So you were held to a standard, but not the standard that we're held to now. And then to your point, the USAPL was formed in 1997, 1998, and became the governing body and became the affiliate into the IPF. And since their inception, we've always and I've always been a member. I mean, the second that switch happened, I joined the USAPL. I wanted to be affiliated with them. I wanted to continue on that trend. And so it's all I've ever known. And since the USAPL's inception, we test 10% of all of our lifters at every single competition. And we also have a very, very strong out-of-meet testing program. And so if you're in our registered testing pool, which means if you're an elite level lifter, or you're on our radar, so to speak, you're going to get tested out of meet. And so, look, it's naive to say that any sport is drug-free. I mean, there just is no such thing.
Right.
But I like to think that the vast majority of USA powerlifting powerlifters are clean, and if you're playing Russian roulette. We don't, approve TUEs, therapeutic use exemption, for hormone replacement therapy. Other federations do, we don't. So those are just some of the things that hold us to a higher standard. And it is what it is, right? I'm not being self-righteous. These are the rules that we've all agreed to play by, and we're going to play by those rules. And those who don't, eventually will, in all likelihood, get caught or find their way out of our organization in another way. But to your initial question, it is frustrating when you go to an IPF World Championships and you understand that other countries aren't implementing the same standards that we are. And so, if you follow social media, you followed a lot of the stuff that you've brought to light here. And, on Instagram, you can see it. And if you go to the IPF website, you can even see it. I mean, they have it listed right there in some of their files. In 2017, there were 42 out of 110 nations, that's 38%, that did no testing at all, none. And then the following year in 18, there were 46 out of 119 nations, so that rose just a little bit. It ticked up to about 39%. But then in 2019, that jumped to 44% of the member nations. That was 57 countries out of 130 did no testing at all. So, look, man, actions speak louder than words. And so you ask the question, why is that happening? Why are you allowing other countries, and that number to increase, do no testing at all? So it's frustrating when you understand that you arrive at a World Championships, there's a really good chance that you're competing against, it's not a level playing field. Our lifters are clean. Every single member of our national teams, if you go to a World Championship, you are going to get drug tested prior to getting to the World Championships. All of the members of that team are going to get out of meet drug tested, as they should. So we know that we're arriving with a clean team at least. Okay? Other countries, the same can't be said. And so it's like, look, it is frustrating on that level just to know that we're, at least for us, it's not necessarily an even playing field. I think, the IPF, they've been talking about this goal of making it into the Olympics. That's constantly been the drumbeat, if you will. But, part of that is proving that you're clean. Well, one way to prove that you're clean is to not test, and that's essentially what they're doing, is they've dropped their testing down. Well, if you don't test, you're not going to catch as many people.
Well, haven't they proven that pretty much all of the Olympics is dirty anyway? So
yeah,
it's not like it's like even weightlifting is on its way out every year, every 4 years. They're like, let's kick weightlifting out. So if they brought in powerlifting, it would be the same thing. And it's probably big. Like the United States is a huge market for a lot of athletes, for media, for everything, for all the sports, for all the Olympics. Other countries have big markets as well that may or may not be testing as much. But those smaller markets are the ones that, if they tested, they would never get any airtime. So if they don't test, at least maybe their guy comes to the top. They have a shot at marketing their sport, marketing their country as victorious. So I understand it from that perspective. Like it's hard out there, and these little countries trying to compete with the United States, with China, with Russia, with anybody big. It's David versus Goliath out there.
Of course, and who am I to be self-righteous and question the decisions that they make for themselves or their family. To your point, you have somebody coming from this small kind of one-off country, and they can literally and figuratively, by virtue of doping, change their lifestyle and change their life and the course and the trajectory of their life financially by being able to provide for their family, because if the government, awards them for winning a medal or something, who am I to, come on. It would be, I think that's narrow-minded. Fortunately, I'm very, very blessed. I live in quote-unquote the first world, and thank God for that. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily begrudge someone for making that decision or that choice if they can alter the course of their life and their family's life for making that type of decision in one of these smaller countries.
Yeah, it allows them to have a job and have a purpose. Whereas if they didn't do anything, they maybe would just get killed or murdered or something. Something else would happen. And it's a way of life out there. I think that at the top level, and even my mindset lately, because I've been looking into this, and the more and more I look into it, I think everybody's on drugs. And my mindset is that at the top or at any competitive level, you should just expect to get screwed over, because it's more likely to happen than you getting a pure, fair shot at whatever you're trying to do.
Right.
Everything is altered. Everything is enhanced. You got freaking horse racing. The guy's getting popped for rubbing a steroid cream on his horse. Look,
right.
I assume all the horses are doping at this point now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find a really clean sport. And even in, I don't know, I was watching some video on YouTube about the Little League World Series, and they had a whole thing about this Little League team that they didn't play by the rules, and they took away all their trophies, and this was like 7 years. It's crazy. Like, nothing is pure. You put adults in charge of anything, we're gonna fuck it up.
Yeah, and ultimately I think it just comes down to, personal accountability and responsibility.
Yeah.
And look, the only person in life, and this is true for all aspects of life, the only person you can control is yourself. That's the only person you can control. And so, unless if it's a parent caring for a baby, but essentially, you make your own decisions. You have to take accountability for those and responsibility for your actions, and then of course deal with the consequences. So, in large part, at the end of the day, a lot of these lifters, they're truly the only ones who know if they're clean or not. I can just say with a very high degree of probability and accuracy that the vast majority of our lifters are clean, and I firmly believe that.
You think it's easy for them to beat tests?
Look, there was a podcast that Larry Maley, our president, just recently appeared on. It was the Two White Lights podcast, and he was asked a question, and he answered it this way. He said, our most tested lifter in the USAPL has been tested 96 times, and he didn't reveal that person's gender, but he said, look, and they've never once failed a test. He said, so they're either a lot smarter than us, or they're clean. And so I think, my wife has been tested. I mean, she's probably, I don't think she's been tested by USA Powerlifting. I mean, let me rephrase. He didn't announce who that person was. It could possibly be my wife, because I think I've got it narrowed down to one of three people that could possibly be. And my wife, because she's been at this sport long enough, could possibly be one of those people. I don't think she's been tested by USA Powerlifting 96 times, but she's certainly been tested 96 times in sum total internationally. And so, again, I mean, is the technology out there to beat the test? Of course there is. We see people beating the tests and so forth, and then you have institutionalized cheating with China and Russia and some of these other countries. We certainly, not to my knowledge, have institutionalized cheating in the USAPL. I mean, that would be just,
No, I think anybody that tries it does it on their own accord, and when they do that, they get popped.
Exactly. Yeah, right, exactly. So there's, if anybody's doing it, they're going to get caught. All the lifters that I've been associated with, none of them, to my knowledge, has the knowledge nor the means financially to circumvent these tests.
I think that's the biggest part of it, is the money, the financial backing.
Exactly. These elite athletes in these other sports, the NBA, the NFL, et cetera, where there's there's hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, changing hands, and being generated by virtue of these sports. It's those sports where, there's obviously, like you said, the money, the backing for these athletes to circumvent the tests at the appropriate times. But in powerlifting, USA Powerlifting, come on, man. Nobody's making that kind of cash.
There's no money in winning powerlifting competitions, except if you market yourself really well on Instagram.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly. Yep.
In terms of your own training, are you still competing? Are you still training for competition? Or are you just sort of general maintenance and 100% focused on coaching athletes?
Yeah, so in terms of my own training, I'm definitely training. I haven't competed. I know the last time we saw each other was at South Brooklyn Weightlifting Club. in April of 2015.
That was a while back.
Where I sustained a pretty catastrophic injury.
That was a wild lift, man. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I was going, just to kind of educate your listeners, I had always had this goal of hitting a beltless 500 squat, and I had been on track to do that. And all the signs were pointing that way. You know, I had squatted 490 at my previous competition. My training was on fire. I went into the competition feeling great and like I said, on track to hit kind of that milestone that I'd wanted to hit, a 500 beltless squat. And I hit my first 2 attempts, and then all hell broke loose on the third one. And I wound up rupturing both quad tendons, tearing both ACLs, my MCL on my right leg, and I broke my right ankle. So if anybody have ever seen Brandon Lilly's squat on social media, we certainly didn't post mine, and I've never seen the video, and I'll never watch it. But that's what I've heard it look like, is I basically, my legs just buckled, and I landed on my knees and fell over backwards. And so, anyway, not to,
what do you think caused that? Was it just an overuse and general wear and tear that just built up to that moment, or was it, did you unrack it?
No, I really do think it's what you said just a second ago. I think I had some chronic tendonitis in my knees, which clearly I think had become tendinopathy, kind of disease of the tendon. Right. And I think that's one of those injuries, one of those chronic overuse injuries that if, just because it feels better doesn't mean it's gone or it's healed. And so I'd had some achy knees for quite some time, and you take a little bit of time off here, a little bit of time off there, and you use recuperative modalities, ice, rest, chiropractic, acupuncture, all these different things, Graston technique, ART, all the tools in my toolbox, so to speak, to kind of keep the pain at bay or mask it, if you will. And yeah, I think it was kind of like an old timing belt on a car, man. Just kind of, it was kind of a one-off thing. And I honestly think, I don't think it had anything to do with the weight on the bar. I was clearly capable of lifting that weight. I mean, I nailed my first 2 attempts, and it was just a 10-kilo jump to the third one. I think you could have had 315 on the bar, and the same thing probably would have happened. It was just because it was a max, and it was heavy, that my weight shifted to the other leg, and instead of kind of destroying only one leg, I messed up both of them. So, yeah, I think that was the cause of it. So, to anybody out there who's experiencing chronic tendonitis, particularly in your knees or elbows or maybe even your pec, that's something that you want to pay attention to. And don't be afraid to take additional time off, because you don't want something catastrophic to happen. Now, fortunately, I spent a year in physical therapy, and I've been able to rebound actually to previous levels. I haven't competed, and it's not because I haven't been physically able to. It's just that my love for coaching has just added so much more value to my life since the injury that I've been so focused on just coaching. And specifically, I love working with lifters of all levels, first-time novices through elite level world champions. But just the demand for kind of my services in terms of game day coaching at the national and the elite levels has really increased. And so I get a lot more value out of coaching. So that's not to say that I won't compete again. I'd like to, but I've just been so focused on coaching and working my craft and so forth. But I'm definitely training behind the scenes, and I think and my strength has gotten back to, at least in the squat, where it was, and beyond in the bench and the deadlift. So yeah, I'm excited about stepping back onto the platform at some point, although I don't have a definitive date in mind.
What is your best competition lift with a belt, if the 500 was your goal without one?
It's funny because with a belt. So it's interesting. I've never done a USAPL. I've never done a competition with just a belt. So it's been all or nothing. It's been like equipped
or nothing.
Yeah,
equipped or raw.
Exactly, because when I stopped, back when I started, there was no raw division.
Right,
so
it was all equipped back then, right?
It was all equipped. You could come to a meet and just wear a singlet or just wear a belt and knee sleeves. It's just that there was no division for that, and you were essentially giving everybody such a head start toward the finish line. at that point, you're pretty much just folding. You're pretty much just saying, all right, man, I'm resigning to the fact that unless I'm a freak, I'm coming in last. So rather than do that, you learn the equipment and you compete equipped. And so I did that for a really, really long time. And then I had a couple of minor injuries and stuff, and I took some time off, and I said, you know what, I want to hang up the equipment and just kind of rebuild my base. And when I did that, I just came back completely raw. This was like even before the whole knee sleeve thing took off. And I was like, man, this is pretty fun. Like, not lifting with a belt, and I just felt like, damn, the belt's kind of getting in my way, so to speak, and just the way that I'm built. And I'm not, I'm not standing on a soapbox saying that everybody needs to go beltless. And I actually got probably as strong, without the belt as I ever was with it. So, I've pulled over 600 pounds with no belt on, and I was, like I said, knocking on the door of a 500 squat with no belt. And, those aren't phenomenal numbers by any stretch, but, for somebody who's built like me with longer limbs and so forth and not necessarily designed to be a powerlifter, I was pretty happy with those numbers.
For anybody who can't see you because you're sitting down, how tall are you, and what are you weighing in at?
So I'm 5'11" and a half, and I would compete at 105 kilos, so about 230 pounds. So just as a frame of reference, I mean, I'm really tall to be an elite level 105. I've been good friends with Kurt Karwoski and Ed Cohn, which, as you know, are two legends in the sport, and they kind of joked around with me. I've known them for years. They always said, look, a man of your height, you need to be 300 pounds plus minimum to be competitive at a high level. And they're absolutely right, because when you look at the guys in my weight class who are, that upper crust, national level, and then, of course, world elite level, they're way shorter than I am. 3 to 4 inches shorter. So I'm too tall for so. But it's fun getting strong. I know my role. I like to stay in my own lane and play to my strengths, which is game day coaching. That's what I'm passionate about. And so, but yeah.
How do you make the adjustment when you're you start coaching and then your athletic endeavors take a back seat? So how do you make that adjustment, or how did you make that adjustment when you decided I would just want to coach athletes and I'll compete once in a while, but it always takes a back seat? I even have that issue. It's not easy to train.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been good about making the time, right?
Yeah.
Being intentional. I mean, look, it's always kind of been my mission statement, for SSPT as a person and as a facility, to make people into the strongest version of themselves, both on and off the platform. Because we're primarily working with powerlifters. I mean, we work with other people as well. And I've put such value and such joy into doing that. My training, it does take a back seat. I mean, it's because I'm no longer competing, or at least competing actively currently. But I still make the time,
You still lift, yeah.
Yeah, I still lift. Look, and I still train, with weights 4 times a week, and I make time for that. But I think because coaching others and seeing them succeed truly does, at its core and in my heart, add more value to my life than my own success as a lifter. The transition has been a little easier. You know what I mean? I still do get a lot of value and stress relief out of throwing around heavy weight for myself. I mean, I still extraordinarily analytical, with my own training. I still track my bar velocities. I still do all of that stuff. And it is important to me. It's very important to me. It's just not as important as my outreach and helping other people. And so I think when you have to rank things. You have to create a hierarchy in life. I hate to use the word prioritize, and the reason being is because if you understand anything about the lexicon of the word priority means one. And so it's kind of this American thing where we say priorities. It's really supposed to be singular. But say la vie. You do have to rank things. You do have to rank things and prioritize, if you will. And so I think when you can do that effectively, then things are put in their proper place. You have a proper perspective, and you're just a happier person, man. Rather than in this constant tug of war. Ultimately you have to make a decision. And I realize, and this is not a cop-out, it's not an excuse, and nor am I throwing shade on elite level lifters. I understand that I'm not going to be an elite level power lifter. You know what I mean? I mean, hell, when I was a little kid, I wanted to play in the NFL, and those dreams get shot down quickly. You come to these realities. And so what you do have to do is you have to play to your strengths, and stay in your own lane and do the things that you're good at. And so, and that's what I've tried to do. And when I've done that, I just feel tremendously gracious, and I'm just thankful and blessed and happier. And yeah, so I don't necessarily struggle with that anymore.
I get that, and it's important to understand what your limitations are as well. So it's hard because for me, I'm here all day, 12, 13 hours a day. So yes, I have access to a gym 12, 13 hours a day, but the majority of my time is keeping the lights on. So my mindset is not always, I got to train for 2 hours straight and get my lifts in, because anybody that walks in the door, as you know, as your gym owner, anybody walks in the door, hey, how are you? What can I help you with? So if I'm in the middle of a set and my mind's going, I got to hit this lift, and then somebody walks in, all right, well, I guess I'm done. So I limit myself to like 15, 20 minutes sometimes.
Yeah, you're as a gym and a business owner, you're always on, so to speak. You know what I mean? And so
yes, of course.
Unless the gym is closed or you're training after hours and you have that private time to yourself, man, you have to be available. It just that's part of the course that comes with the business.
A lot of people don't understand that you have to be on and available as a business owner all the time. So it drains you. So one of my athletes told me that I live in a perpetual state of sleepiness. I don't know if you had that same thing happen to you when you had your gym in Maryland, but that's me all the time.
Yeah, I think at times, man. I remember when Suzie and I first. How large is your facility?
It's a little less than 4,000. It's about 3,500 square feet. So it's a little
so that's about. Yeah, I mean, but so ours was even smaller than that. Ours was 2,000. So yours is about two times the size of what we had in Maryland. And when we started out, man, it was just Suzie and myself. We had zero staff, zero employees. So you are literally there from open to close.
Yep.
I mean, and I think we all learn in the business that's not sustainable.
It's not ideal.
Forever. No, you exactly. It's not ideal. Eventually, you're going to have to get some staff so you can get your head and your ass out of there and have a life and have a little bit of free time so you can, do the things you need to do and have some self-care. And so, I mean, Suzie and I were tethered to that lifestyle until we got some employees. So yes, I can identify within a constant state of lethargy and sleeplessness. Yeah, and then, as you build a team and you build a staff, then you can unplug a little bit and recharge your battery, so to speak. So anybody who has these misconceptions or illusions of, I'm going to create my own gym and it's living the high life, man, you got another thing coming. So don't get me wrong. I think we pursue this for a lot of the same reasons, and it's because we love it, right? We just, we really truly enjoy this stuff, and we like helping other people and seeing others get better. But yeah, I mean, nobody's making millions at this, man.
Not doing it this way. No, not at all.
No.
If you want to live the high life and sleep on a platform for 20 minutes like I do, open a gym, because that's how it goes. Get those naps in.
Exactly. Right.
So, anyway, so now you're getting involved with M1 Sports, doing some remote coaching?
Yeah, so at January 1st of this year, I teamed up with a company called Macros Inc. And so for those of you who don't know who they are, they're largely a fitness and nutrition company. They provide diet coaching, nutrition coaching, and fitness coaching, primarily for general population people. And but they've created these two kind of one-off extreme sports divisions, if you will. One is endurance type stuff, which is more like endurance runs, these Tough Mudders, these, I forget some of the other types of races that they run, but more endurance focused. And then, of course, they branched off and created a powerlifting division. So I am in charge of MI Sports powerlifting division. I'm the director of powerlifting coaches. So right now I have a team of only 2 coaches, but working underneath me. And we're really in our infancy stages, trying to grow the sport within the larger community that is Macros Inc. But we want to be kind of an on-ramp, if you will, to taking beginners and taking newbies, largely people that are getting into strength sports or barbell training for the first time. And so we just had our first virtual powerlifting meet, which went pretty well. And we just started registration for our second one, and we're almost full. We're capping it at about 75 lifters because that's a lot of videos to review. But the virtual meets are cool, and especially during COVID, where not everything is back open yet. We're pretty much, for the most part, back wide open here in Montana for the most part. But in some places, they're not quite as open, and the virtual thing, provides an opportunity for people to kind of stick their foot in the water, so to speak, and test themselves.
How does the judging work with that? Is it tough to judge a virtual?
Well, so what we do is we create a very thorough welcome guide, and we've got video tutorials because we live in an age where nobody likes to read anymore.
That's true.
And so we quickly learned that just having a PDF welcome guide doesn't cut it with pictures and photos. So we've created a video series that explicitly goes through lift by lift what is expected in terms of camera angle, in terms of what you're allowed to wear. You're not required, for these first-time newbies, we're not requiring anybody to go out and buy a singlet. We don't expect you to spend, $75 to $100 on a singlet just trying something that you may never try again. But we do have requirements on the type of clothing that you wear. No sweatpants, no baggy jeans, no basketball shorts, those types of things, so that we can clearly see depth. So to answer your question, we have a panel of judges, and we all review the lifts, and that's how it's done. We essentially have to do things virtually as well. So is it as ideal as being there in person? No, of course not. But for some people it's the next best thing, or for some it might be the only thing,
right.
Because if they can't get to a powerlifting competition, and then hopefully it encourages them or the people who want to pursue this further to then hire us or our team of coaches, for some more customized coaching.
Is it done through Zoom, or is it just like you send in videos? You
send in videos, so you have a date, and everybody trains for that date, and you have to get weighed in, you have to videotape and record, or you have to record your weigh-in. We need a timestamp on that, obviously, and then there needs to be timestamps on your videos because they all need to be completed within the same day. You can't squat one day, bench the next, etc. But you basically have a 3-day window to get all that done, and then you package that up and you submit the videos to us, and then it takes us, the last one took us about a week to comb through the videos and determine the winners and the weight classes and so forth, but I suspect it might take us a little bit longer this time just because we're likely going to reach our cap at 75 people. So if you do the math, 75 times 9, I think that's almost 700 videos we need to look at.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of videos. So yeah.
How do you deal with the people who don't have kilo equipment, or are you requiring them to have that, or is it just any iron plates?
No, not at all. We're very inclusive in that way. You just need to have a barbell and have the ability to put pounds or kilos on it. We just need to see clearly what's on the bar. You can't tell us that 500 pounds is on the bar and just us kind of accept that it is. We need to be able to see that. So whether it's pounds or kilos, whether you're squatting out of a cage or a competition rack, that's your choice. You can use bumper plates. We don't care, just so long as we can see the videos executed to competition standard through a full range of motion. And so since there are no commands given, we require that, obviously with a squat, ordinarily you'd get a squat command. We require them to walk it out, to stand motionless, demonstrate control for just a moment before descending into a squat. And then the same thing upon the recovery of the squat. When they stand up, they need to freeze and just hold it for a second before walking it back in. and the same is true with the other lifts, the bench press,
Right.
All those sorts of things. So
Where can people find information about this meet?
they can go right to the Macros Inc. website, and on the drop-down menu there, they can click on MI Sports, and then click on powerlifting, and everything is right there. We've created a free ebook for people. There's free powerlifting training templates, both beginner and intermediate, that they can download and have access to, that we've created. So there's a ton of free stuff to kind of, like I said, be that on-ramp for people to get them in the door, get their foot in the door, so to speak. And they can take all that. There's no expectation for them to sign up for anything. All the proceeds of the meet go to nonprofit organizations. So this one is actually going to the National MS Society, which is for multiple sclerosis, which kind of hits home to me. My mother dealt with multiple sclerosis until her death 2 years ago, and battled that for about half of her life. And so it's really, so I'm kind of encouraged and inspired by that. The last one that we did was for the Veterans Build, which is building homes for veterans who come home from war and are dealing with PTSD and other afflictions and so forth. So so all the proceeds, it's a free competition, or you can pay the entry fee, but 100% of the entry fee goes to these nonprofits that we've chosen. So we're just really excited about it. It's low cost. This is a low maintenance way of just getting your foot in the door and trying something new. So for anybody who's interested in trying powerlifting, it's a great way to try it without really, breaking the bank, so to speak.
Awesome. I might have to give that one a shot.
Yeah,
and get a couple lifters out here to submit some videos. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we would love that.
I have one final question for you. In terms of the equipment for USAPL and IPF, there's a lot of equipment regulations in terms of underwear you can use and certain wrist straps and certain companies. Why do briefs matter? Or why does a certain wrist strap matter in terms of competition?
Okay, so I'll answer the briefs one first. And I'll tell you about one really silly rule, and we all admit that it's silly. So in USA Powerlifting, whether you're competing raw, which is also called classic at the world level, or you're competing equipped, everything has to be single ply, which means one layer of thickness. And so one of our really weird rules is you can't wear a t-shirt under your singlet that has a pocket, which is ridiculous, right? Like the pocket is going to help you. But by rule, if you have a pocket, it's an extra layer, and now you've got 2-ply, 3-ply of garments, it's absurd, right? But it's the rule. So you have to be uniform in the way that you execute your rule. So that's a silly rule. The one with the briefs has to do with, and we since changed it. So it used to be that you could only essentially wear tighty whities, right, or a jock supporter, right? You couldn't go commando. As a matter of fact, don't ever do that. you couldn't go commando. You had to have on tighty whities, and the reason for that is because if you wear like a boxer or a boxer brief, it creates the illusion underneath the singlet that there's an extra layer there, that there's another fabric. And also, if you wear like boxers, they'll get really bunched up at the hip crease when you squat. And with a singlet on, it makes it much more difficult to discern depth.
Okay.
So that was the primary reason. We've since changed our rules and amended them to include boxer briefs. So you now can wear like boxer briefs that extend down a little bit. You cannot wear like compression shorts, because oftentimes compression shorts, they're compressive. It's not like they're going to help your squat. It's not the same as wearing a squat suit. But they extend beyond the singlet, lower than the singlet. Oh, lower than
the shorts?
Yeah,
some of them, yeah.
Exactly. So some of them come out of the singlet. So it's kind of a aesthetic and look thing. Plus, from a distance, you don't want to judge having to kind of do a double take, very quickly. Like, are those actually supportive briefs or what's going on? So those are kind of the silly rules with briefs. To your next question about wrist wraps and all that sort of thing, that comes down to money, man. Like any other business. I'm not going to lie, right? it's the which companies are willing to support USA Powerlifting and the IPF in that way. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I don't follow CrossFit closely enough, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't it used to be called the Reebok CrossFit Games?
Yes, and now it's Noble.
Noble. Okay, so you couldn't wear Under Armour to the Reebok CrossFit Games. And that's not them hating on Under Armour, it's that Reebok is a paid sponsor, and so they expect you to be outfitted in Reebok apparel.
Yeah, I don't think they made that rule, though, in CrossFit. I think they encouraged you to wear Reebok, but I think they let everybody wear whatever they want. I don't know. I might be lying. I'll have to fact check myself on that.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to argue. You would certainly know much more than me. But in theory,
maybe.
That's kind of how some of that stuff goes, right?
Yeah.
You pay money to essentially advertise your products, if you will, on a national and an international platform. And for that reason, at the local level, we've been much more lenient in terms of the brands that people show up with.
Yeah.
If you come with one of these off-brand wrist wraps or something, as long as it meets the specifications, you're good. Like our wrist wraps can only be 1 meter long.
Right.
You can't come with a 2 meter wrist wrap. I mean, that's not going to be good anywhere, regardless of brand, right? And the same thing with knee wraps and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of why the rules are the rules. We do have some silly ones, but I think if you kind of look at other sports, a lot of sports kind of have, a couple of silly rules that make you be like, why are they doing that? That's why we're doing that. So, yeah.
And weightlifting had a lot of regulations with their outfits and uniforms. And with everybody just complaining and saying, I have to do this for religious reasons, I need to wear this, I need to wear that. I think they just gave up and said, wear whatever you want. Just make sure you get the lift over your head, kind of, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see both sides of it, right? I mean, if you're trying to be this polished product, and you're trying to market your product to other companies who might want to invest in you, I mean, for lack of a better word, you don't want to look like you're unkept or have your competition experience be a shit show. Pardon my language. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you want people to all be properly attired and look a certain way. That's why our spotters and loader teams, are outfitted in essentially the same T-shirts, and usually it's a sponsor's T-shirt. If Rogue has sponsored the competition, largely you'll see the spotters and loader crew all wearing Rogue T-shirts. That's why our judges are held to a higher standard, and they wear, at their national events, we wear coat and tie, so that they look official, so that they look professional, so that it's not just, hey, some dude that we pulled out of the crowd who's been lifting for a while, who also knows the rules, who hasn't passed the written exam or the practical exam, sitting in the chair. It's just to legitimize yourself, essentially.
Yeah, it's much different than weightlifting. Weightlifting is, we just pulled a guy out of the chair for our local competition. He passed the test, but basically just make sure their elbow doesn't bend on a lift and we're okay. Yeah.
Right.
Powerlifting has a lot of rules. It's fun.
We do. Yeah. So.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right, Matt, where can people find you? Where can we get some information if we need some programming or have questions?
Yeah, if you have any kind of questions, one of the best ways to reach me is through our website, which is just supremesportspt.com. On social media, you could reach out to me. I'm MLGary72 on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook under Matt Gary for those of you who are still using Facebook. And of course, you can find all my personal contact information right on the website. If you want to reach out to me directly via email, I would certainly welcome those conversations and inquiries.
All right, Matt. Thank you for being on here. We appreciate all your time.
Man, thanks for having me. It's been an honor. I always feel flattered and honored when people want to hear what I have to say. So
yeah, dude, this was great. And remember, guys, age is inevitable. Weakness is not. So get out there and lift some shit. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching today's MarbleCast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any content. Check out our Spreadshirt shop to grab some swag, and if you would like to support the MarbleCast, please head over to anchor.fm. All of the links are in the description, and it helps us out to keep the channel running. Thanks so much, guys. See you next time.